Welcome, everybody, to the Be Your Own Hero podcast. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Brittany Renew, your host, fantasy author, realtor, and entrepreneur. I'm excited to have someone that I do know personally that I've known for quite a long time here. Today, I'm joined by Kasey Brennan, and Kasey is a multifaceted creator, which I love. I love using that term because it definitely describes Kasey. She's had a lot of different experiences in the entertainment industry, including documentary filmmaking, some producing. She's worked with lots of, media companies and names that you would know. And she's also a speaker and a podcast host herself. And she is a certified Enneagram coach, which we'll definitely get into. So as you can tell, she has a lot of passion for a lot of different things. So, and I don't know, Kasey, did I get everything on the list there?
Yeah, I think so. You did great.
Well, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so let's dive in and just kind of have you share a little bit of your backstory and the journey of how you got to where you are today. Just to give everybody some context.
Yeah. So I have grown up in the entertainment industry, and I come from a family of filmmakers. And so we all are kind of in the industry in one way or another. In college, though, going way, way, way back, I really wanted to be a journalist. That was kind of my mode in life. I was like, I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to do research. I want to dive into research. I want to be on the front lines. I wanted to work for National Geographic. That was like my
That's
dream.
cool.
And
Yeah.
then about a year after, about a year after graduating, I got put on this project where I got to do kind of a documentary type work around the world with the World Cup and this company called Athletes in Action. And it was awesome because it showcased both of my loves. So it showcased the research journalistic side because we're sharing a personalized story, and then also the filmmaking side, which was awesome. So it really tackled both of those things that I realized, oh, this is something I could really lean into. And yeah, so ever since then, I mean, it's been going on 20 years now of being in the entertainment business, but mostly on the side of working with nonprofits
Mhm.
and doing documentary type work. And then recently in 2020, I became certified as an Enneagram coach just from my own personal struggles and things in life as that comes up. And Enneagram was a huge, huge catalytic, what is the word? Catalytic moment, I don't know,
We'll go
moment
with
in
it.
my life that really just, it made a big difference. So I wanted to make a big difference in other people's lives and share it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely what I'm getting from you, even just from your journey with documentaries and all that with filmmaking. It's like your goal is to try to bring out the stories for other people and, storytelling in its essence and really diving into like what are those people that you're, having the documentary about, or people that you might be working with from the Enneagram coach side, like getting down to the heart of what makes people tick, why
Yeah.
things happen the way they do and how we respond to it. So let's go into a little bit about actually what I would love to ask is it seems like kind of in that same vein is the projects that you've taken on, it's definitely
Mhm.
focused on like affecting real change in the world. That's the
Yeah.
sense that I got from it.
Hmm.
So maybe
Yeah.
just share why that's important to you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is the lens that I pick every project I've worked on through, whether it be a speaking engagement to working with a nonprofit in a marketing concept or a documentary type production. It is that lens. It does this affect change in the world, and that just matters to me because I feel like there has to be a purpose behind everything that we do, right? There has to be
Mhm.
something that really propels us forward into it, or what's the point?
Yeah.
And for me, I want to know that this thing that I'm working on is going to make a difference in someone else's life, or make change or affect change in a very wide capacity. Um, and that was, I mean, I was very blessed in the very beginning of my career to be able to work on a project that did just that. And so maybe through that lens, it's just kind of carried me throughout my career. But that's just really, it's a really important thing. And that goes for Enneagram coaching too. I think, I use that same lens in working with my clients and coaching. And I'm always like, how can we make the best of your life? Like, what is the best possible outcome in this scenario that you're working through? So yeah, it's just real important to me.
Yeah. I mean, why do you like, what do you think there would be some of those common things that we kind of get stuck in our own heads about and that keep us from, you know, pursuing our dreams and things that we're
Yeah.
passionate about?
Yeah. I mean, life's complicated. Yeah.
That's an
It's
understatement.
complex. I mean, right? Like, I think that we go into these seasons of our lives full of expectations that are never going to be met. Um, and that's okay. It's great to have good, high expectations. It's good to have big dreams and goals. Where we lose sight of it is the disappointments along the way, and kind of
Mhm.
falling into that struggle trap of like, ooh, this didn't work out. And so therefore this next thing that I'm excited about isn't going to work out. And then it's just a
Mhm.
spiral effect of negativity. There's a really great book John Acuff wrote called Soundtracks. I recommend it to everyone because it changed how I view things.
Okay.
But it's such a great book because we all have these inner soundtracks that we tell ourselves, like, this didn't work out because I'm so bad at, or I failed at this, therefore this next thing I want to pursue is not going to work for me. And it could be little soundtracks that we just carry with us through our lives. And so the book really it talks about reframing that and kind of changing the
Mhm.
narrative and giving yourself a new soundtrack, something that's more positive, and say, this didn't work out this time, but I'm really great at persevering, or however you want to shift that narrative. Um, I think that's really important because life is going to surprise you in the best and the worst of ways. And I mean, in my own personal journey, I have three neurodivergent children. And like, I was just talking with a friend the other day about the grief that follows that. And that's,
Mhm.
I love my kids. They're amazing. They're so unique individuals, each of them incredibly gifted in their own ways. But that also means that the expectations that I had in my mind for how the family would look, or what we would do with our lives, or
Mhm.
what they might be into, it looks different. And it's
Mhm.
always going to look different. And so, I think that we have to be open to those surprising elements of life that will take place that are hard and painful, and it's navigating the tension of the joy that comes with that, along with the grief that comes with that. And I think you have to honor both.
Mm. Yeah, honoring both grief and joy at the same time. That's, I mean, I think it's easy for us to just think those are two separate things and they can't coexist, but
Mhm.
you're talking about, it sounds like you're talking about really having a level of acceptance of what is going on in life, and what's happening around you and what's happening, like, in your own world, and then accepting that and choosing to find some joy in the middle of that sadness.
Yeah, I think that's where we get stuck, is when we don't choose that in the middle of it. That goes back to one of the reasons why I did become an Enneagram coach. Is I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, which is the enthusiast, but it's also the type that shoves things under the rug and doesn't want to address pain, because
Mm,
emotional pain is hard. And I didn't realize that I was doing that, or, I thought that I was being perceived in a different way than I was actually being perceived by people that were close to me. And it was one person that called me out and said, "Hey, you've lost your spark. Like, I just don't see it in you anymore." And that was shocking. But when you really peel back those layers, you can address, oh, I am very sad, and I don't want to address that I'm sad, and I don't want to address that I'm grieving over this, because then that means I'm admitting to the pain that I feel. And
mm,
so rather than, shoving it under the rug, you have to pick up those pieces and you have to say, this is hard right now. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to say, this is a really hard and difficult thing. What is hard and difficult about this? And then as you go through those layers, then you can start to see the beauty in the midst of it, because it's not you're not changing the narrative. You're not going to change the outcome of the situation, right?
Hmm.
But you are changing the way that you view it because you're choosing to see the little pieces of joy that come along with it. That doesn't change that you're sad about it too. So that's what I mean, like behind the holding the tension of joy and grief. They can coexist. I think it's an intentional thing though. You have to be intentional about recognizing the joys and the griefs in it. And that's the thing that gets you unstuck. Because then you're able to kind of move past that stuck place in your life and see the joy and the beauty in it and move forward and say, okay, well, this is what my now looks like. So how can I exist with the things and the dreams and all the things that I want to do in life? How can I make that happen with this new now?
Mm. This new now, that's cool. I like that phrasing. Yeah, I mean, I think we get it's easy to get stuck in that dichotomy of like, it's all or nothing. I'm
Yeah.
in this space dealing with this type of grief and trauma or whatever adversity, and that means that nothing else can coexist, in the same space. So getting out of that dichotomy and, really looking for the silver linings. I mean, because there's always silver linings, the joy in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And I think that if more people were aware of that, it would just help so much from even just thinking about the standpoint of like mental health. The rates of
100%.
mental health in our society is just skyrocketed. I mean, I've experienced, anxiety and things like that. So I know firsthand what some of that feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that in relation to like some anxiety and some of those other emotions that kind of get
Mhm.
wrapped up in, grief and all of that?
Oh yeah. There's this it's a movie as well, but there's also a really great book called it's what is the name of it? John Green wrote it. Um The Fault in Our Stars.
Okay,
It's a
yeah.
sad film, sad book, but there's this line that just stuck with me. It says grief does not change you, it reveals you.
Mm,
And I think I think we think of grief and we think of all that you were just talking about, like all the anxieties and all the things that come with that and all the hard feelings surrounding that. But we have daily griefs. I think we all realized that when we walked through COVID.
mhm,
And that season, like that was a grieving season. And we lost time. We lost friendships in a way that some people did completely lose friendships. But I think, when you look at those daily griefs and how that does reveal you and how the anxieties and the pressures and all the things that come with it, like stepping back and noticing that and actually seeing how you react in the midst of it is the
mhm.
thing that will grow you like nothing else. And so I think a lot of us do think about death being the main grief that we experience or something,
Yeah.
really tragic, really big trauma. But then there's the dailies that also reveal those things to us, and that we have to navigate and have to find new ways to navigate through them.
Yeah. Well, I do think that we have so much growth that comes out of those spaces in our life when we go through those little traumas, whether it's, is small or something large.
Mhm.
I mean, that's been my experience is it's kind of like, I think sometimes it's like, oh, it's a little bit of the unfortunate side of life. It's like we often grow the most through really, really difficult, challenging seasons, but that's just kind of the way it is.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point, it opens you up in a different way. You're kind of
Mhm.
your soul is laid bare and you're forced to really take a hard look at your life in these different areas. Then, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what happens in those
Mhm.
situations.
Mhm.
So I would love to hear your perspective on that related to like as a caregiver.
Mhm.
We've talked about that, in like prep for getting together.
Mhm.
And you mentioned with your kids and
Mhm.
having, some of those, neurodivergent, like some of those different things that you're having to deal with.
Mhm.
for anyone that's in that space as a caregiver, whether that's as a parent or maybe as a friend or a child that's caring for their parent, how, what are some maybe like practical ways that, we can be a better caregiver and not lose ourselves in that process?
Yeah, I think taking care of yourself first is huge. I think a lot of us are so invested in the outcomes for our kids and for those that we love and care about that we lose sight of our own selves in the midst of that. And so we're putting everything, I mean, I can speak for myself because I was there, I was putting everything into finding a diagnosis for my son when he was 6 months old. Um, and it took up my whole world to a point where I did lose myself. Um, but finding those things that make you happy, even going back to just little, like thinking back to things that really made you happy, even as a child or different
Mhm.
seasons of your life, writing them down, and then finding new ways to do that now, like bike riding. I mean, just going on a trail, a local trail, and going for a bike ride can bring so much joy to an
Yeah.
adult because it was so much fun as a kid, as growing up. So it's finding those little things that really light us up inside, and then we can pour from a full cup. We can go back into our children's lives and advocate the way that we need to, but also without all of the extra stress. I, I don't want to look back on my life one day and say, oh, my kids just saw this critical, um, you know, really it looks self-indulgent in some ways where you're
Mhm.
just like focused so much on their outcome that you're missing it,
Yep.
like you're not happy. You're not
You're
happy
not
with that.
present with
You're
them.
not
Yeah.
present. And so that's been a big shift in my life in the last, I'd say 4 years of just trying to, go back to the basics of what are the things that make me happy. I went to Sundance recently and last month, and it was the best thing because it kind of brought back that film geek side of me from college that I
Yeah.
loved. And I hadn't done that in so long. I can't remember the last time I sat in indie films and just watched them back to back and talk about films in between at coffee shops. It was
Well, it
amazing. It was
sounds
exactly what I
wonderful.
needed. It was. And I remember when I was there, I think I almost got emotional at my third film sitting there like, "Oh, I love sitting here, not having to have responsibilities right now." Um, but that's the thing that lit me up. And so I was able to come home and pour from a full cup and enter into some, heavy seasons with my kids right now in school and academically, and do so in a way that wasn't critical and wasn't mean mommy, and was able to kind of show up and be present, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this is such a like a current topic. There's so much around self-love these days, and it is really important because you're right. We we're going to be pouring from a full cup when we take the time to do the things that fill our soul, make us feel like, a human again, reconnect to
Mhm.
all of those things that we're passionate about. And I would say it took me a couple, like the last couple years, I really started to learn that in a real way, running a business. I think partly just as women, we tend to throw ourselves into that caregiver mode more. And I, as a real estate agent, having clients, so like I was just always falling back on like wanting to serve my clients the best, which is noble, but doing it at the cost of my own mental
Mhm.
health and physical health. And it's just, yeah, I had to really work through those feelings of like guilt around that, I think. And then understanding that if I take time for myself, then I am able to serve other people really well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's talk about from the Enneagram standpoint, in this role of like caregiver, I think, like I said, women are more, I think, affected by that.
Mhm.
I'm actually Enneagram 2, so I'm the
Mhm.
helper. So that's like even
Oh,
worse for
yeah.
me. So what would be your advice to help someone kind of get out of that helper mode where we are,
Mhm.
just stuck there.
Yeah. It's speaking up for yourself, recognizing that, as a two, that you need time for you. You need to do the things that you love and you need to be loved on. And I think that
Mhm.
um well, I can't speak for myself, but for two specifically, I could say you don't ask for that as much, right? So
Yeah.
it's like maybe saying to your spouse or somebody that you're really close to, like, hey, I really need this right now. It matters to me a lot. If you could find some time in your schedule, that would be really awesome. Just
Mhm.
speaking up for your needs. And the thing that happens when we don't do that, and this is everybody, when we don't share our needs and when we aren't speaking up about them, resentment is going to boil at the surface. It's going to just kind of sit there, and we're going to think that they should know what I need because they love me and they care about me. So why don't they know what I need? Right.
Yeah.
But nobody's a mind reader, and they're also thinking something else that they're probably having resentments over. So I think the check-ins are really important with those that we love, and just saying like, hey, I'm feeling this loss in this space right now. Here's what I need. Or then turning that back to them saying, what is something that you feel a lack of right now?
Mhm.
How can I fill that for you? I mean, that would change relationships if those were just two things that people sat down and had check-ins about, like, hey, what can I do? How can I support you right now? Or is there something that I need to do more of? That's so important.
Yeah. Is there any other Enneagrams that you can think of that really like struggle with taking time for like self-care?
Yeah, I mean, I think every number does.
For sure.
I
Yes.
think every single number needs to do that in different ways. Their motivation for it is different. Some need to do it more than others because they just aren't even recognizing it in the moment. But every number, like, I mean, ones, they need to take a step back from the perfectionism that they see in every single scenario and say, hey, I just want to have a messy afternoon. Like, that's important to me right now. Like, let's just go have a messy afternoon and let that be okay. And twos, speaking up for your needs. Threes, recognizing that they're not a failure in every situation and that they can let it go and just lay it down. And I think that's important for threes. They don't do that often because they have to have the control and the need to not be a failure in the moment. And so for type threes, yeah, to say, or for the one that loves a type three, say, hey, you're not a failure. I love you exactly how you are. Lay that down. Let's go have a fun afternoon. Fours want to be seen as unique all the time. And so fours don't typically have a very big problem speaking up for their needs. They have a problem being heard because they're not direct about it. And
Mhm.
so fours, if they were to speak up and be more direct with the loved one of their life, like rather than kind of talk around in the big emotional words that they use, which are fantastic, just speaking up and saying, hey, this is actually what I need. How can we get here? Fives kind of go in the same bracket, I would say, as a two. They need to speak up because fives just won't usually speak up for their needs. And sixes as well, sevens for sure. I mean, but those five, sixes, and sevens have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
And so the three of them also need to. Emotions are just hard. They live in their head. That five, six, and sevens live in their head. So like taking the time to tap into that heart and that emotional
Mhm.
moment, like that's difficult. And then eights and are they're challengers. So they're usually very direct about what they need, but they could be softer in the way that they deliver it to get the
Yeah.
results that they want. And then nines are usually happy or on the outside. They're happy with anything, any choice that you have. That's great. It's good for me. I'm a nine.
Yeah.
I'm a peacemaker.
Go with the flow.
But they need to be more right. They need to be more direct as well. I think going like along with the two, just being direct in their needs and what they want.
Yeah, so as you're going through that, I'm thinking, so I'm a 2 and I've never gotten my husband to take the Enneagram, but I'm pretty positive he's a 9
Yeah.
based on, just how I know him. So yeah, it's like So obviously, it sounds like we probably struggle with being direct on what we need to each other on both sides. Yeah.
Right. Yes, and that happens so often in relationships. I see that all the time where, both numbers I mean, my husband and I are like that. He's a 3. And so we're both aggressive numbers and we're both future mindset. And so like we're
Yeah.
both like, what are we going to do a month from now? That sounds awesome. So much fun. But we're not tackling the present. And that's so key for those check-ins because it's like,
Mhm.
hey, right now in this moment, am I meeting everything? Like, is there something that I'm missing? Is there somewhere I'm not supporting you? That's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. What would be some like advice for like from a relationship standpoint, like with a partner when, I would say I feel like on average, probably most people are two different numbers. Like, I don't know if it would be as common for two Enneagram numbers to be partnered up. When I talk to people, I feel like that's not as often what I hear. I don't know if that's been a different experience for you with coaching, but like, how do you coach, people in partnerships to kind of speak to each other and how they need that?
Mhm.
It's almost like the five love languages. Like, how do you like
Yes.
show love to the other person?
Exactly. And our love languages shift and change over time. So,
Mm,
like in whatever season we're in, sometimes we need to even check in on that. Like, hey, I know that your love language is typically physical touch, but it seems like you might be needing something else right now, or you needing some more words of affirmation. Just even being aware of that is so key. I love the
mm,
love languages. But yeah, I would say when you are aware of the other people in your life that you love and how they interact and what they're motivated by, you're able to already be one step ahead in how to communicate with them because you're looking at it through their lens, right? So whenever we can step into somebody else's lens for a second, and it's never going to be
mhm,
perfect because I can't read anyone's mind. I can't read my husband's mind, but I can see it from the type that he is. And I can step into that lens when I'm aware of it. And I think when we do that, we're able to communicate better because they feel seen, they feel
yeah.
understood. There's a deeper level of empathy between the two of you. So I think couples working together in the Enneagram is so key. That's where so much change can take place because I think we're so into our own selves. That's human nature. We're going to be into our own selves and what we're doing, and how we can grow and evolve, and that's great. But also taking the time to grow and learn about somebody else and their type and how they tick and what's motivating them and all the shadow sides of their personality.
Mhm.
Um, that's where such deep empathy can come in for your spouse or your loved one.
Yeah. No, I love that. So let's shift gears a little bit. Um, I I feel like you have a lot of synergy in your life with all these different things that you're passionate about, pulling them all together. And, I said multifaceted creative, earlier when I was
Mhm.
introducing you. And this is something that I've talked a lot about in my own life, just trying to blend, realtor, entrepreneur, author, podcaster, like blending all these two things together.
Yes.
And I feel like it speaks to some limiting beliefs and things at the core whenever we don't have synergy or when we're struggling to have synergy with those things. And I see you emulating that. And I would be curious to hear your perspective on having synergy when you do
Mhm.
have so many different things that you're passionate about.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because I do not feel that way. I feel like that's a constant struggle for me is finding how do all of these things fit together because I wear so many hats. I mean, literally and figuratively, I have a
Yes.
collection of 30 hats, and I do a lot of things. And so I, it's so hard for me to what I have learned in the last 2 years specifically is you have to have a thread. And I think that, as we talked earlier about affecting change in the world, and everything that I do goes through that lens. And
Yeah.
then secondly, it's what is the one thing that if I could pare it all down to, that is that synergy thread. And for me, it's story. Um, that goes for if I'm sitting across from somebody interviewing them for my documentary, it's story, it's what is their story. If I'm sitting across from my client and I'm coaching, it's story. Um, and marketing, I do some marketing for some nonprofits. It's story. It's all story based. And so that's
Mm.
really what it comes down to for me. And then if I were to like add in the other thing where I, want to write a book one day and I'm working on a book proposal right now, also story. It's owning our story. I think it's Brene Brown in one of her books. I love her, but it talks about, like owning our story and loving ourselves. And it's through that process that it's the bravest thing we'll ever do. And so
Mm.
that that's probably where I would appear to the outsider as though I have synergy. because I view because I am able to look at it through those two lenses. I think it's always difficult when you're trying to pull together all these different things that you work on and that you're passionate about, and you want to succeed in all of them, you want to do well in all of them. And I think it's hard to know where to land with that. Like, I mean,
Mm.
there's so much information out there. There's so many books to read. There's like,
Yeah.
do I have two Instagram accounts? I don't know. Or do I do this? Or how do I pull all these things together? It's exhausting. But
Exhausting.
I
Yeah.
think if you are, yeah, I think if you're authentic and you're authentic in all of those spaces, and you do have a through line, right? So like if it
Mhm.
is affecting change in the world, or it is story and caring about people's stories and caring about how they share their own story, um, then it does kind of appear as though it has some synergy to it.
I love that. Yeah, having you use the word threads, having a thread that's like pulling through, weaving that through all of these different
Mhm.
areas of your life. And, it's the center point is you. And that's what I have a business coach that I work with for a handful of years. And that's something that we've talked about with just ultimately all of these things have me in common. I'm at the heart of these different, areas of my life. So remembering that but taking that a step deeper with what's that, it's almost like talking about your why, like what's that true why that's like your North Star in
Mhm.
making
Yep.
sure, because that's going to affect your value system. So making sure that everything that you do, different decisions you make, that you're putting it through that filter of that value system, that why,
Mhm.
that thread of, like, for in your case, storytelling.
Yep.
So by putting it through that filter, you're able to, make the right decisions and to go in the direction that you're trying to go.
100%. And I think one of the things I've really learned too after walking through some business coaching last year is creatives will die to their creative name. My my business coach at the moment, Lisa Whittle, said that to me. We will die to our creative names, and so we have all these wonderful, amazing creative names, and there's a reason why we named things the way that we named them, because they matter and they have like
Mhm.
all this depth and meaning for us. But it doesn't land as a marketing concept, or it doesn't
Yeah.
land for anybody else because they don't have any concept of your deep need for this name.
Yeah.
So that was something I learned last year, and I actually made a shift in my business because of that. And I had I had my business name as like this really cutesy Enneagram coaching name, and I loved it. I'm like, it's not working. And so now it's just Kasey Brennan Coaching. Like, that's all it needs to be,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
think we overcomplicate it sometimes too when we're trying to merge all the things.
Yes, overcomplicate. Oh man, I definitely can attest to that. But I mean, I think that speaks to the importance of having someone, a coach in your life,
Mhm.
because the coach can show you things that you're not seeing yourself, because
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
dispassionate third party, well, not dispassionate per se, but it's a third party who is
Mhm.
not stuck in your head, so they can see things that you can't see.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what with your Enneagram coaching, what does that process look like for someone? Like if they, reach out to you and say they're interested, like kind of walk us through those
Yeah.
those steps.
I always like to have a first call initially to just kind of see what goals. That's what we would do in the first call, is just what goals do you have? What are you trying to get out of this? Where are areas that you're stuck right now? And some people don't know where they're stuck, and that's okay too. And that will come as, you know, you kind of dive deeper into your number and your type and just what um, how you tick and how you're motivated. I also love to work a lot with internal family systems and go back to how we were raised and our
Mm.
role in the family. I think that that really carries, regardless of personality types or anything, that carries a lot of weight. And then I also like to give a lot of homework in regards to spiritual disciplines, or just like some practices that we can take into our weeks. One of the ones that I do, and I love to recommend this to others too, is, you know, at least once a month, I try once a month, is just go somewhere quiet that's beautiful, that you're just out in nature. In Florida, that's easy to find.
Yeah.
But, you know, just go outside and put your phone in any kind of distraction, because we're very rarely without our phones,
Yeah.
and to leave it in the car. Let someone know where you are for safety. But, you know, put your phone in the car and just be in that
Mhm.
space by yourself for at least 2 hours, because that's the part where it starts to get uncomfortable and you're like, what's happening in life? I'm away from my phone. But just being having that time and that space is essential for your
Mhm.
well-being, and having a journal with you so you can just kind of like, any thoughts that might pop up, anything that's uncomfortable might pop up, that happens. And so I'll tell my clients to do that and then report back, and we'll kind of walk through like, why do you think that showed up for you? Why was that uncomfortable for you? And just kind of peeling back those layers. When we go throughout our lives, you know, we do, I know I can speak for myself, we do intentionally just kind of like shove things aside that might need to be addressed in the moment.
Mhm.
That's normal. That's just a coping mechanism, right? As we move through life. But just to kind of go back into those places where like, hey, you put that over there for a reason. Let's bring it back over into focus for a moment. Peel back that layer. Why did it affect you the way that it did? And then you're able to kind of move forward with a healthier outlook. And that's
Mm.
that thing, whether we think it's bothering us anymore or not, because we put it in a place that's safe, right? It is, because it's taking up brain space that
Mm.
we're not even aware of the mental capacity that it's taking up. And so being able to address those things, uh, it's a release in your brain. You're able to just kind of let that go, you know?
Yeah. Hmm. That's interesting. So you're freeing up like
Mhm.
mental space, which then can then
Yes,
be filled with, you know, a new idea or something like that. So
exactly.
hmm, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap things up, any like closing thoughts that you would like to share with the audience, you know, related to, you know, I think I just think about the work with that you would be doing with coaching with Enneagram specifically is just really peeling back the layers and helping us see the things that we're holding on to, the stories that we're telling ourselves that are no longer serving us.
Mhm.
So, which is, you know, thank you for doing that work and helping other people with it.
Um, yeah, I think that, you know, as we get into this, the middle of our lives, right? I mean, I'm in the middle of my life, and I look back and I'm so grateful for the growth and the struggles and the pains and all the things. And I would say 5 years ago, I would not have said that.
Mm.
Um, because I hadn't done the work that it was necessary to really peel back those layers of pain and grief and struggles. And seeing the joy in the midst of all of that has really been the thing that has been the biggest source of growth for me. And I just love giving that to my clients. I love seeing those breakthroughs for them and just loving on the people around them in a different way. And just you walk through the world a little differently, you know? The awareness is heightened, and vulnerability is not so scary. It's courageous, right? You
Yeah.
see it differently. So yeah, that's just something that I have really, really loved.
Awesome. Well, tell everybody what's the best way to connect with you if they want to learn some more about you and maybe do some Enneagram coaching with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do have 2 Instagram accounts. I decided
So
you can
do
find me
I.
there.
so it's
Right.
okay.
You can find me at Kasey Brennan Coaching or Kasey Eldridge Brennan. That's kind of my personal. And then KaseyBrennan.com is my website where you can reach out to me for coaching.
Awesome. I meant to ask, is there any fun like film projects that you have in the works for now,
I
or is that,
I
yeah,
have had a project in the works for like way too long. And it was actually at Sundance, I decided as I was sitting there watching all these projects, I'm like, I am going to do it. I'm going to finally do it. So that is something I'm working on this year. And
awesome.
I'm excited about it. I'm always in the middle of a project with, local nonprofits or different organizations and things. But this one will be a personal passion project that I'm very excited about. So
Ooh, okay. Well, I can't wait to see more about that later on. That's awesome.
yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you, Casey. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully, my goal is for people listening or watching just to kind of pull some things from these conversations of like how they can apply and make change in their own lives. The
Mhm.
name of the podcast being "Be Your Own Hero." I mean, we have to take control of our own lives and make these changes. So,
Mhm.
I feel like you definitely shared some really good insights with that today. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Bye.